A jury has found Alain Bellefeuille guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder in the death of an Ontario Provincial Police officer and of the attempted murders of 2 other officers in a 2023 incident. The Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police say today's verdict acknowledges a life-changing impact felt by the officers, their families, and their colleagues. Now, in May of 2023, Sergeant Eric Mueller and Constable Mark Lauzon went to Bellefeuille's home after a concerned neighbor called for a wellness check. Mueller was killed, and Lauzon and another responding officer were severely wounded when Bellefeuille repeatedly fired his rifle over several minutes. At issue during the trial was whether Bellefeuille knew the people entering his home were police and what his intentions were when he fired. Crucial evidence in this case came directly from the body cameras worn by the officers. This was a major story at the time, and we want to get more analysis in today's verdict. For that, we turn to Nick Cake, who's joining us from London, Ontario. He's a criminal defense lawyer and a former Crown Counsel. Nick, good to have you on the show. Thank you for making time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Natasha. How can I help?
Well, let me begin by getting your initial reaction to the verdict, guilty on all counts for Bellefeuille. What's your read of that?
I think that it makes perfect sense. Obviously, we will never know what the jury did to come to that conclusion because it's illegal for us in Canada to dive into the minds of jurors. We can't ask them questions like we see in the United States. But when you look at it, the whole purpose of this trial was what was Bellefeuille thinking? Obviously, there was some type of defense of property or self-defense defense, but certainly there was no air of reality to that defense when you look at the facts, when you watch those body cameras, when you know that there was 14 seconds between the time that the police entered the house and the first shots came out, when you know that during the second volley of shots, I believe, that Bellefeuille was firing upon marked OPP vehicles. There was no way that he was acting in a way, throwing out the body camera into the neighbor's yard. There's no way he was acting in self-defense. It's clear that the jury believed what the Crown was selling and that this was an ambush, and ultimately he was convicted because of it.
Let's talk about how the defense presented that argument, that Bellefeuille was sleeping at the time, that he thought that these were intruders. How do you build a case for that based on everything that you presented, which the Crown would have presented, that, look, he knew what was going on, he could visibly see the marked vehicles, that it went on, the shooting incident went on for as long as it did. How did the defense mount their case?
Well, ultimately, when you're looking at the self-defense defense, what you need to show is what's going on inside of your client's mind. What were they thinking? And so they did try to do their best. They talked about the fact that Bellefeuille had friends who had had a break-in or a home invasion some weeks before, that it was late at night, that Bellefeuille had been drinking, that he had been sleeping at the time, trying to show a confused individual. The fact that he said that he didn't hear the police announce themselves. So there were a number of factors that Bellefeuille himself, when he took the stand, tried to put out there. Because, of course, the only way that we know what he was thinking is if he took the stand. And he did in this case. But ultimately, it wasn't believed. Because when you look at all of the evidence, not simply what he said, but it's the trier of fact's job to evaluate all of the evidence. And when the jury did that, it appears that they did not give his evidence that much weight, that it wasn't that credible or reliable based upon everything else that they had heard.
Nick, did we ever get to a point of understanding a motive or why, since he has been found guilty of the charges, what would have motivated him to do this?
Well, motive is not an essential element of the offense. The Crown doesn't have to prove motive, and thankfully, that's the case. If motive had to be proved, then criminal trials would take so much longer, and they would essentially become circuses based upon assumption. I cannot assume to know what was going on in Mr. Bellefeuille's head. Obviously, he was suffering from some wellness issues. He had access to a firearm for which he modified, and it appears again, based on what the jury found, that he set about on a plan that evening.
I mentioned earlier that the body cam footage played a huge role in the evidence that was presented in this trial. Talk to me about that and how critical this has become in these types of cases.
Well, I think body camera evidence just generally is critical in all types of interaction between the police and citizens of our country. I mean, the body camera is the objective observer. It doesn't lie. As long as the police keep them on, then we can see the entire interaction from start to finish. And as body cameras roll out throughout our country, as more police services get involved with the body-worn cameras, it certainly is going to paint a clearer picture of what took place. And it played out in this case. I mean, you can see the police enter. You can see what happens. And ultimately, that assisted the Crown, no doubt, in getting their convictions.
As often happens with cases like this, particularly involving the police in a violent incident, it's expanded to larger conversations, Nick. And one of those larger conversations was this man Bellefeuille's access to guns, the fact that he had modified it. Is that illegal in any way? And forgive me if that's a really obvious question, but I don't know. Is that illegal, and how dangerous is that? How common is that?
So certainly the SKS rifle that he possessed was in itself not a restricted weapon. You still need to be licensed to possess that weapon, but it wasn't restricted. The modifications that came were 100% illegal. He had modified the clip to hold 22 rounds. The legal maximum capacity round in our country is 5. And so to answer your question, yes, it was illegal, and yes, these things happen all the time. I think that a lot of Canadians think that we live in some type of gun-free utopia country, that we have gun laws and that the gun laws are working. And ultimately, we do have gun laws. I'm not going to comment on whether or not they're working or not, but this isn't a gun-free utopia. There are guns everywhere, and you can look anywhere on the internet to find the instructions very easily to remove springs and certain things like that in clips that then turn the guns into a once legal thing to possess, as long as you're licensed, into something that is illegal to possess no matter what license you hold. And that's what we have here.
And finally, Nick, in that larger conversation that's taking place, something that's again popped up is the safety of police officers. They were responding to a wellness call. A neighbor said that they heard a lot of shouting, a gun go off, and then silence, and they felt concerned for the neighbor, they felt concerned for Bellefeuille and just general safety. And so the police come, and subsequently people lose their lives. So what's the discussion around safety precautions for the police? Should something have been done differently in this case?
I'm not going to say that something should have been done differently, because the only people that lost their lives on that day was a police officer. And so police officers, of course, hold a very dangerous job in our community. They are armed, they wear vests, they are protected as best they can be. They are trained. They are trained both in use of force, but also trained to deal with people who may be in a mental health crisis. Mr. Bellefeuille may have been having a wellness crisis that day. We will never know, because ultimately it didn't play out like anyone, except potentially Mr. Bellefeuille, wanted it to play out. But the police have a dangerous job. They are oftentimes going into unknown situations, and especially with the ease that it can be achieved with modifying some of these firearms, they don't know the firepower that they may be up against. I don't know how to change that, but ultimately the police do a very good job in our community, and it's a very dangerous job. And I think this is just an unfortunate, horrible example of the dangers that the police face every day.
Okay. And just because we haven't addressed it in the interview, to remind the audience that in Canada, a first-degree murder conviction automatically comes with a life sentence, and you won't have a chance for parole. Alain Bellefeuille will not have a chance for parole for at least 25 years. So, Nick Cake, thank you so much for your time and really helping to put the story into perspective for us. Appreciate it.
No problem, Natasha. Take care.
You too.